Welcome to the Sandwich Generation podcast, a resource for adults balancing the dual responsibilities of raising children and caring for aging parents. Whether you're helping your parents downsize, explore real estate options, navigating caregiving, or looking for practical advice to help your family thrive, this is the place for you. Join us as we bring you expert insights, heartfelt stories, and actionable items to support you and your family within this unique generation. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah. Sarah's. We have two today.
Yes.
It's always a good day when you have multiple
One
Sarahs.
one with an H and one without.
And if you're anything
You were
like me, almost always with another Sarah. I
Probably
feel like there's a lot of us.
There are a lot of us. Yes. I was at a networking event last night with another Sarah who does not have the bookend. So she spells her name like yours.
Yeah.
The bookend. I like that.
How, yes, we're of the generation where there are a lot of Sarahs.
Yeah. I have my boys play baseball, and there are 3 moms named Sarah on our small team of 11 kids.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
I'm like, oh, and I have 2. So technically that's a high percentage. Just say Sarah and someone's going to respond.
Someone's going to turn around. That's great.
Right.
In college, there were so many Sarahs that I didn't respond unless somebody used my full name. My maiden name was Scott. So it all ran together. Sarah Scott.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was me. Otherwise, It was just a Sarah. That was not me.
Yes.
Oh,
I love it.
So you said you had a little partner behind you.
Yeah.
I do. This is my chief security officer. I don't know if you can see her very well. She's tucked in her nest right now, but if shenanigans occur, she's on it. So
shenanigans. Well,
I knew you were a dog lover.
Yes.
What's her name?
Her name is Hazel.
Hazel.
Hazel Fern.
Oh my goodness.
I love that.
I love it. Yeah. I have a Marshall Zachary. I don't think we gave Raya a middle name.
Oh,
and we didn't give Gatsby a middle name either. Oh yeah, there's still time. We could just add it on, right? And then Sarah has dogs too.
Yeah, they don't have middle names either. Never thought about it.
Choose their own, certainly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
One, she's actually named after my husband's grandma. Like it's a whole story. So I found her in the alley behind our house in February of 2020. And it was, we had lost his grandmother at that point, but it was the weekend of her birthday that I found this Hazel. Kevin is my husband, and he and this puppy are BFFs. Like I had another dog.
Inseparable.
Yes. And she was mine. Like I was her person, and Hazel, Kevin is her person. And he just had never had a pet like that. And he just was like, maybe my grandma sent me a dog. Like it was the sweetest thing.
That is really sweet.
So we named her after his grandma.
I love that. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Those two. It's just silly.
Hazel is our featured guest today. Actually, not. Hazel's not our featured guest. Sarah Kendrick is. So what about you? Do you want to give yourself a proper introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what, I'm going to say it wrong, RHEA Services are.
Had it right. Yeah, no, you had it right.
Okay.
My story is maybe a little less interesting than Hazel's, but it's still a pretty good one. Yeah, so I'm Sarah Kendrick. I'm the founder of RHEA Services, and it's a business that I started in 2020 because of some life events that I'm sure we're going to talk about. And I'm not sure if now is the time that you want me to jump into that story, but it's been a journey to do the work that I do.
Yeah. So that tell us your story about how you decided that this was something that was needed for other people after your own family experience.
Yeah, and I'm happy to. Thank you. So I previously was a music therapist for kiddos with developmental disabilities and loved the work. And it was time for me to find something else. It was very hard work, and I did really enjoy it, but also it took a lot of me, and it was time for me to kind of step away and have a little space and figure out something else. And I didn't know what that looked like, but I was open to ideas and possibilities. I was not looking to start a business. I am a fourth
That's
generation
interesting.
entrepreneur. Yeah, no, my
Fourth
dad,
generation entrepreneur.
dad,
That's
grandpa,
good.
great grandpa, and I think his dad too. So what is that for? I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Mhm.
So, but I see how hard the work is, right? And so I was like, no, I'm just looking for a job. That's what my next thing is going to be, something super simple, something really easy that doesn't quite take so much. Well, oops. Um, but in that
Wow.
interim time, yeah, I was. I had actually read an article about a woman who had lost her husband really suddenly. They were in their early 40s, and he got a late stage cancer diagnosis, and then was gone in 30 days. And
Wow.
yeah, my heart obviously just went out to her, because what an awful thing to have happen. But in that article, she talked about two things that really stood out to me. First, that she had to navigate what she called the business of death, of managing everything without him, and like shutting down his insurance and selling his car, and should she keep his phone, and all of that sort of stuff that she had to do, because that's just what you have to do. And then she also talked about how they spent so much time that last 30 days together just figuring out the stuff that he knew that she didn't know. Like, what are your passwords, and how do I get into this, and where are your accounts, and what do I need to know about the things that you manage? And both of those things really stood out to me as, well, that's, yeah, what an awful thing to have to do, right? Like, it's, and not everyone, most people don't even get that 30 days necessarily.
Yeah,
right?
that you don't get the warning sometimes,
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And so
But it's certainly not the way you want to spend the last 30 days with somebody
Right.
that you
Yeah.
love.
no, not at all. No, it should be all, no business, all joy, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so
Eating whatever you want,
that's
drinking
right.
whatever you want. Yeah.
Seeing something beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All the good things, none of the drudgery. But that's what they had to do, because it was, soon he wasn't going to be there, and they had to
Mhm.
figure out what that looked like. And so I found that just so unfortunate, especially the part where she talked about having to shut everything down. I was like, surely there are people who can help you do that work, right? There's
Yeah.
got to be somebody providing that service. And I think I'd be really good at it. So how can I get that job? Because again, I was only looking for a job. And so I started looking and started trying to find and asking a lot of people, like, hey, do you know anybody who does this? And everybody's like, no, but that's a great idea. So I had never done that work either, but I started researching what it would take, how to shut down an estate, and what it would be like to do that work, and what you'd need to know. And because you can't, I mean, at this point, there are some resources out there, but they're pretty varied on
Yeah.
what you actually have to go through, because every family is so different. Every person is so different. But so I just started gathering those pieces of information together. And then we actually lost both of my grandmas that year.
Oh.
Yeah, within about 3 months of each other, actually. So the day of my one grandma's funeral, my other grandma moved into my parents' house because she had fallen again and couldn't live on her own anymore. And again, we're in 2020, so it's the height of the pandemic, and
Sure.
it was move her in with them or not get to see her again, because
Not see
Move her
her.
into a
yeah,
senior
right, because
community and not see her. Yeah.
and
Wow.
that was a very hard decision for all of them, and it was a very hard experience. But so my parents were navigating finalizing my one grandmother's estate while becoming caregivers for my other grandmother.
Sure.
And then when she passed, navigating her estate. And
Mm.
so my own family was my first estate closure, is what I call that work, clients. And it was very affirming of the fact that there was a lot that I could do to support families during that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I also realized, though, is especially with my one grandmother's estate, she was still running everything. And we were finding documents that were older than I was, of like life insurance policies. And I was like, well, is
Yeah.
this a thing? Is there money?
Right.
Mhm.
I don't know. We still don't know. I tried to chase it down, but the company had changed hands a couple of times, and
Oh, wow.
the documents that she had weren't very informative. But why would she have kept this paper for 45 years if it didn't mean
Right.
something?
Mhm.
But the person who knew wasn't there. And so that was the inspiration for doing the pre-planning work that I do
Yeah.
mostly in my business now. But yeah, it's like I said, it's been a whole journey.
Yeah.
I know. I was so excited to have you on this today as a podcast guest because I did the pre-planning work with you years ago, and so I'm eager to hear about your updates and new initiatives and how things are going. So it's going to be fun to get caught up.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah. So I think, what we're trying to do is educate that adult child on how they can be proactive for their parents, for themselves, because a lot of this is things that you can do. Like you said, Lisa, you've done it, and just kind of get things squared away for yourself. But the it just can eliminate so much stress that they don't even know they're going to have down the
Right.
road, but it's coming when you are in that situation where someone, passes away and you're trying to find all these documents and records and some things that are just you're never going to find because
Right.
it was all up here for them, or
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I think what you do is so important and can really, really help a lot of families and caregivers that are, in this situation. So when you say pre-planning, tell us a little bit about what that is, like what you're doing, how you're helping people.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And thank you for that. It's a weird work that I've chosen. And for those who understand it, who have had the experience, they really get it. I've been honored to collect stories. Almost everywhere I go, when I speak, when I share my story of what I'm doing, someone will come and tell me, "Oh yeah, we lost this person too soon, and this is what happened to my family." And it's just almost everyone has a story of someone who was gone too soon and they couldn't figure out what to do. And so it's yeah, I'm honored that people share that with me because I do think it's so important to keep in mind. But yeah, so the pre-planning is what I do most of actually at this point. Um, and that's what I call it, even though it makes a lot of people think of like, oh, funeral pre-planning. And I'm no, not exactly, because that's a whole separate thing.
Right.
But it's the best way that I know how to explain what I do. So it's just planning ahead. It's just creating a legacy of peace instead of one of chaos. And that can be for any life event. It doesn't have to be an end of life event. It's just, there are times where again, I'm sure that you all probably have your own stories of someone who was in the hospital and couldn't communicate, or who, just was unavailable to do the things that they normally do. And then we have to scramble to figure out, okay, well, how do we manage things without them? Because they're not here and not available right now. And so
Yeah.
that's what it is. We're planning ahead so that we can have some of that peace of mind and know that we've done the best that we could to prepare our loved ones to navigate without us if they have to, because at some point they're going to have to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
So what does that look like? What is the pre-planning? Like if someone wants to work with you, Sarah, what are the things you're going to be asking them to do to prepare for you? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. It is pretty straightforward, I think. But I do have 3 distinct services at this point. And so I'll talk mostly about the personal and the caregiver, because that's the newest one. And I know that
Sure.
actually you don't know about that one
Okay.
yet. But
Yeah.
so the personal pre-planning work is for a solo person, if they live alone, or a family unit. So if there's somebody who manages a lot of things within the family, this is the backup plan for their information. And so how that process works is I've developed fillable PDF books. So I have those available on my website, but I also have the capacity and desire to guide people through actually doing this work. So instead of just saying, here's your book, go do it.
Yeah.
I walk people through the process. And that looks like, for the personal work, 3 75-minute sessions where I provide a checklist of information ahead of time of everything that we're going to talk about. So this person or family goes to do their homework and gather that information together. because I don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
But then we meet virtually on a video call so that I can work with people wherever they are in the country. And over the course of that time, I ask them the questions and I fill out the book for them. So it provides the accountability of making sure that we actually do it, right?
Right.
And the just streamlining the process of some of the people that I'm working with are tech savvy and they'll be able to take it when we're finished. Some of them really
Yeah.
aren't, but it's for their kids or it's for somebody else to be able to navigate their information. Just making it a little bit more accessible for people, because it is an overwhelming work to try and sit down and think about all of the things. And it's a really easy thing to put off. So yeah, I guide people through that. At the end of that process for the personal work, at the end of those 3 sessions, they've got everything that they've shared with me in that fillable PDF book. And I either deliver it if they're local to the Indianapolis area, or I ship it with a tracking number so that it gets to them safely on a flash drive. And then they have that fillable book. So as things change, because as we continue living, our information is going to continue changing.
Mm-hmm.
They're able to keep that updated. So it's a living document. It's not one and done. It's foundation. Right. Now you take it from here. So yeah.
Wow.
I really like that accountability piece. I mean, I did feel that way when we were going through the process, and it shouldn't scare someone, like, oh, I'm going to have this, but it's like, I'm going to have this meeting with Sarah, and these are the documents. If I want to make this meeting as impactful, and efficient as possible, I need to have these documents in line or whatever. So that accountability piece, you meeting with them one-on-one is key for sure.
It does feel like something that you would easily just keep putting off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yes.
Oh, nothing's urgent right now. I'll do that next week. And then next week comes and it goes.
Yep.
Like, oh, I'll do.
Do you have issues? I probably put you off. I'm just thinking, I know myself, but do you have people who are like scheduled with you and then say, I need another week to prepare or whatever? How do you work with that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so I've got a couple of stories that I'd love to share.
Yes.
So I have had some people who, I give people a year to do this process.
Sure.
We've got a full calendar year from the time we get started. And then honestly, it's my business. I can do what I want. If there's really somebody who legitimately has had just a heck of a year and they need a little bit more time, I'm happy to work with them on that.
Sure.
But there are some people who they start the process and then don't engage. And so at that point, there's only so much I can't want this more than them. So I'm able to provide them what we had gathered together so far that they can take it going forward. But that doesn't happen very often because of the personal accountability that I pull forward.
Sure.
Right. I'm really
Wait, and how many calls are there or how many meetings are there with you?
For the personal pre-planning, it's 3. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So you could do if you have a whole year to complete it, you could set up, one every 4 months or so. And that doesn't seem overwhelming.
You could. And honestly, it's again, it's pretty flexible in what people need. I find the best rhythm for most people is 1 a month, because if you
get
wait
it done
too long, exactly. Again, it kind of loses some of that urgency. Like I prefer for people to take less time. And I think they do too, because then again, the more you put it off, the easier it is to put it off.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So I think 1 a month is a really good rhythm for 1 session a month. You've got time in between there to gather your information together. I've separated out the sections so we're not talking about all the biggest pieces all at once. So it's kind of there's a good rhythm to it that way. But again, yes, if people need more time, I can work with them as much as I can. And the other story that I was going to share is kind of my new favorite story. So I had somebody who, talking about the accountability piece and how it really does matter to have somebody walk through this process with you. For a lot of people, I had somebody 2 years ago buy a copy of the book that she downloaded. She was going to fill out on her own, but I'll be in touch if I need some help. And I had followed up with her, as you do when somebody, buys a product or, engages with your services, and hadn't heard a whole lot from her. And then I did another presentation for a group that she's connected to in October of last year. and had a consultation with her and her husband in, November or December, towards the end of last year. They decided, okay, we bought the book. We're obviously not going to do anything with it. It's been 2 years, haven't touched it. They started their process at the end of February. And by the end of March, 4 weeks, in 4 weeks, they were done with the whole process.
That is amazing. I liken that in our world, that would be somebody that says that they want to do the sorting and packing on their own. And it takes them like over a year when we could have had it done in 30 days.
Yes,
right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's the fastest anybody's gone through the process. It used to be 5 weeks, but now they've beat them by a week, and they didn't know that ahead of time. So there was no competition that they knew of, but they now are my gold star example of like, I mean, it was 4 weeks and they were done. And it was 2 years of the weight of knowing that this was a thing that I should be doing and putting it off. And like, how much does that cost? Right. Like there's a toll to the mental load, right? Like there's a lot of that kind of moves through. So I love sharing that example.
Yeah. And now they have that peace of mind of knowing all of that information is done in one spot, and it's ready to go. Should something happen, they're prepared and feel the most prepared you could feel for that type of situation. So I think that's great. Yeah. So you mentioned that there's a new, like a what'd you call it? Caregiver?
Caregiver. Yes.
Okay. What's that?
That is the newest book and process that I've put together. So there's also one for small business owners.
I did see that, actually. I don't know if you sent me an email or I saw it online, and I was like, oh, I need that, but I'm busy.
That's how it goes, right?
Right.
No. The business piece came about because I had my own medical emergency in 2022 where I was hospitalized and had emergency surgery, and I was the person who couldn't communicate anything about my business, and it's just me. I mean, I do have my chief security officer, but she's not great on the computer.
Hazel, I don't think she's sending too many emails to
her communication skills are probably a little limited as well. Yeah.
All right. We still love Hazel. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My best employee, let's be honest. We have never been attacked on her watch. So she's doing a stellar job. And so it was, my husband doesn't know anything about my business. What happens? He can't cancel my appointments. He can't cancel the sessions that I had scheduled. Yeah. So from my hospital bed, I'm trying to figure out, what do I do? Because I can't just not show up, right? Anyways, so there's a business book, there's a business process. But the Caregiver book is the newest, and I think honestly the one that's most dear to my heart. As I had shared, I was a therapist for people with developmental disabilities, and as you work with people, there are some who will fully be able to live independently on their own and do all their own things, and then there's some who will always need care.
Right.
And so as I was actually working with one of my former client moms to do her personal pre-planning for her and her family, we got to the section on dependence, and we're like, this does not work for your kiddo. He's got higher needs than what is available in this basic book. And so I worked with a group of parents of kiddos with autism, a wife of a person who had a husband with dementia. I worked with someone who had adopted some really high needs kiddos from the foster system. I got to touch base with a bunch of different families who are long-term caregivers for people who will always need care for their lifetime. And I got to put together I call it the Caregiver book because it's meant to reflect what the caregiver knows, but it's really a book all about their loved one. Yeah. It's, what do they eat? When? What is their schedule? What do they need in their environment? What should we be on the lookout for as far as things that they hate? Or are they going to try and run away? Or are they, do they wander if they aren't in a familiar environment? Just all of the things that a caregiver is carrying around in their heads because they're a caregiver for this person.
With them every day.
They're with them every day. They know the ins and outs of it. Anybody else who steps in doesn't know the day-to-day of it, right? And so it is meant to be a pretty all-inclusive just guide for how to care for that person if something happens to that caregiver. And then also, like, again, let's take some of that mental load, put it on paper so that maybe you can take a break and not.
Yeah, I was going to say, so they could do some self-care or, something to get a break from that caregiving. So, I mean, and this podcast is directed toward adult children or those who are caring for aging loved ones. So that book is a great resource for our audience. And our statistics say that, and maybe you have this experience too, the majority of our audience are females between the ages of like 35 and 55, basically. Is that kind of what you've seen from it sounds like not a focus group. These have been some of your past clients, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is, that's when people ask me who resonates most with the work that I do, it is women in the sandwich generation. And it's because we're the ones managing it, right? Like it's all of the plates that are spinning are typically spun by this woman in the middle who is caring for older loved ones or possibly younger or both. And it's just
both.
It's so much to manage, and it's so much that people are managing on their own too. So I'm so glad that you guys are putting together a resource to really help support them in that, because my goodness, it's so many things. It's just so many things.
Well, we're glad that there are resources out there like you. And I mean, that's the whole point of this podcast, is to share and educate. I have a question for you. Did you know what the sandwich generation was before this podcast, or you did?
I did, yeah, because I've done a lot of work on trying to figure out my own business and who I need to be talking to. Just because when I started originally, I really thought, seniors, there are the oldest members of our community. In theory, I thought that they would be the most interested in kind of
your book,
doing this work. That's not true. For I'm sure a lot of reasons, but the people who are the most interested, I was seeing the pattern, because I sat down, I was like, I don't know who my target market is. And so I actually just sat down and looked at my list of clients. I was like, oh my goodness, they're women in this segment of the population.
Right.
And so I had done some research on that and had found the term the sandwich generation, of doing that. So I did know that because I saw it in my own business as well.
You did it. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. Yeah. And I think when Sarah, this was her idea, this podcast. I did the research and looked at where our clients were coming from too, and how many were attached to either an adult child or a guardian or some other person that was their caregiver, basically. And that's kind of how we landed with the sandwich generation in the podcast. So so which book is your most, I can probably get, is it that Caregiver one, or what's the one that you work with the most, would you say?
Well, just for timeline purposes, the personal book is the one that I've worked with the most because it's the oldest.
You've had
it's been around the longest, so and then I've gotten to do more of the business and then more of the caregiver piece as I've moved forward. But the Caregiver, I just finished that one last year. So like that one still feels pretty new to me. And I think as far as, I mean, I don't have kids. I have a puppy. I had 2 puppies, but now I have 1 puppy. But
you do have pet information in your books.
Yeah, that's part of the information you're putting down, right? Like what vet they go to, if they're on medications, like that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, specifically the type of food that they eat, not just
food. Yeah,
because one person knows and one person typically doesn't.
Right.
So yes,
right.
How much and how often, and yes, so we do talk about that too. But I think, like, if I had to pick a favorite of my 3 books, they're all wonderful.
You don't have to pick a favorite.
No, you don't have to.
They can all be your favorite.
Yeah, that's probably wise. I just think the Caregiver book is so, it's a whole person. I talked to somebody about this when I was working on it, and she's like, I was a caregiver, and the other ones are wonderful, and I love them. I've obviously worked really hard to create these things.
Yeah.
But this is a whole person that we're talking about. This isn't
Mhm.
just information about like how to pay the bills. Like, we'll figure it out if we have to. It will be harder, but
Mhm.
probably we'll figure it out because we have to. But when it comes to like, this is a whole human life that we're talking about caring for. This is a whole human person, and it's their,
Right.
it just it matters more.
Mm.
Yeah.
It all matters, but that the human matters the most.
Well, and we see and we hear so many stories of the toll that it takes on a caregiver, being a caregiver,
Mhm.
that toll that it takes on them both physically and mentally. And I don't know what the numbers are, but a lot of times, unfortunately, that caregiver person is the one that ends up passing away first, or
Mhm.
in a situation where they can't relay what
Right.
they
Their
need,
health
what's needed.
declines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just being able to, in my past experience, seeing how many families are left trying to put the pieces together and figure things out because, mom was the primary caregiver, and now mom can't tell us anything about dad. And we don't know, like, what medicines he's on, what pharmacy they go to. We don't even
Right.
know who his primary care doctor has been for the last few years, like things like that. And then, um, and the pets are huge too. I remember so many times in home healthcare where someone would go to the hospital, and we know that there's a dog at home that there's no one there with. And so it's like, who's taking care of the dog right now? We've got to find,
Mm.
figure something out. So um, there's just so many things that people don't even know
Yeah.
that they need to know. And so having a tool like this where you
Yeah.
can put that information down. And, I hadn't even thought about being a parent of a, a child that is potentially going to need care their whole lives. Like,
Right.
I can think of a few people in my life personally that could really benefit from this going forward, just to know that they've put everything that they
Yeah.
know about that sweet little child
Mhm.
in a document, that if something
Yeah.
were to happen to them, that they could be taken care of to the best of. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's just such a stress relief, I feel like would,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that would provide. So,
Yeah.
Well, before we go on, let's take a break and hear from our title sponsor, 37 seconds. So you can fix your lip gloss or whatever you need to do in this time. The Sandwich Generation podcast is brought to you by Indy Real Estate Experts. We're a real estate brokerage dedicated to helping seniors and their loved ones downsize with less stress and more support. And we're proud advocates of dignified aging. From sorting and packing to selling and settling in, our team handles every detail so you don't have to. Whether you're helping a family member transition or planning ahead for yourself, we're here to guide you every step of the way. Learn more at downsizingindy.com, where compassion meets real estate.
yeah. Do you have questions, Lisa? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to get into a little bit about the details of what these books that we've talked so much about, what types of things. Obviously, we're not going to go over everything, but maybe hit some of the key contents of what are in these books.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like to share, we know the basic things, right? That are how to pay the bills and what the passwords are and all of that. So the personal book specifically, yes, we've got all of that information. But some unique things that I pull into this process too are, what are the things that I need to know that I do that nobody else touches, right? So we talk about what do those things look like. One of my clients was an older couple, and the wife was just a little bit of a thing. Like, she was just tiny. And when we got to that section of like, okay, well, what needs to happen that you're the only person who does it, her husband spoke up immediately, and he said, somebody's going to need to stir the salt in the water softener. And here's where I keep the golf club that I do that with, because his wife is too small. Like she physically can't.
Oh,
So she's never done it. She's never, been a part of that process. That's something that only he does. And it's something that he wanted taken care of for her if he wasn't there to take care of it. And so like getting down to those smaller,
yeah.
oh, that's right, those pieces of, oh my gosh, yes, you would have to, you've never done this. So you need to know. So kind of helping people think through those really unique situations too. Another question that I ask, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, wait, are we supposed to stir the salt in our water softener? I don't do that.
I don't know. I don't have a water softener.
I'm so sorry. I was like, well, I feel really good and empowered when I put the 40-pound bag of salt in my water softener.
We're getting it
but
in
I
there.
definitely don't. You're right. I do not stir it. This is very interesting.
I'm not sure.
Maybe it's just it was his thing.
I have never done it, but maybe my husband is. I don't know.
See? Yeah, having a conversation, right?
But that's what I was gonna say. The fact that he was able to just get that out there and put it on paper, even if it's not something that we're supposed to do. Never heard of that.
Better. He has that peace of mind because it's something that he doesn't have to worry about for her. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so the other question that I really like from the personal book. So I do ask if there is a partner, if there's a couple that they do the work together because we're each managing different things and it's really important to come together. One of the other questions that I ask, basically the question is asking if you can't communicate, what do you need in your environment? So say I can't communicate, I'm in a hospital room. What can somebody else do to make me more comfortable? And I always share kind of some background information, like I've got asthma. And so like, no, nothing in my room, no perfumes, no bleach, no flowers, no, just no. I need to breathe, whatever's happening. I'm sure that breathing is going to be really important for me. So just keep all of those things out of my room. Right. And so I'd ask this couple like, okay, well, what might be some of those things for you? And the husband spoke up first and he said, I'd really love to have the TV left on in the background because I'd like feeling like I was a part of things. And I don't know if you can hear or not, if you're, in a coma or whatever, but like some people say you can. And so that I would find that really comforting. And as soon as he finished, his wife said, please don't leave the TV on in my room. I would hate that so much.
Yeah.
That is so interesting.
I agree. Like, it's having those conversations of like, oh, I mean, I hope they never need that information, right? I hope that neither one of them ever has to make those choices for their partner in that environment. But my goodness, how, again, that peace of mind of knowing, well, just in case.
And if you've ever sat with someone who, I'm thinking of my grandfather, for example, who had a pretty massive stroke. And, in 24 hours, he can no longer communicate at all. And the frustration that you could see and physically see on his face and in his body when he was trying so hard to communicate something and it wouldn't come out, and how the tears that would start. And it was like he just needed to be able to communicate. So having some of those things like that could eliminate just some of that stress for the person too.
Sure.
I mean, that would just be invaluable to have.
Yeah. No, I'm so sorry that was your experience.
No, I mean, that's years ago, but just to give you an example, and I saw that in home health all the time too, where people couldn't communicate anymore, and the frustration that happens because they can't tell you. And sometimes they write it either, if they've had a stroke, they can't communicate, they can't write it.
Yeah.
That's so hard. So knowing those things that make you feel comfort and joy and having that documented would be so helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we can do to care well for a loved one. Right. And so in that respect, some things from the Caregiver book, we talk about, we're talking really specifically though, if somebody gets food orally or non-orally, or measurements of timing and how much and when. So obviously all of those details and information, but we're also talking about, everybody will communicate in some way as much as they're able. And so your communication might not look like my communication. It
Yeah.
may
What
not
does
be
that look
verbal,
like?
but
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. It's what do I do? What does it mean?
Mhm.
So it's any kind of communication. If you take my hand and you take me to the bathroom, well, it doesn't mean that you need to use the bathroom. It means that I want you to run water in the sink so that I can play in it. How would I know that? Right. So it's just,
Right.
that communication piece is so important. We also have information on if somebody has a service animal or pets.
Yeah.
Obviously, those are two very different things, but we've got room for both of those in there. We talk through the three life stages that I've put together, because I do want it to serve people in whatever life stage they're in.
Sure.
Is school. So if somebody's in school, it's who are their teachers? When do they have therapies? What are they doing? What does that schedule look like? Do they ride the bus? All of that. I also have day program. So if somebody's going to a day program and doing anything like that, some of your older folks will do that. Usually it's an age out of school type situation where they do the day program. And then I also have, somebody might have a job and maybe they can't live on their own independently, but they've got a job and they've got a supervisor so how can we support them in that? How do they get there? What's their transportation situation? And just all of those really specific details about this person's life and what they do and what they need and how we can support them. And then, the business, it's very similar information to the personal with the added, okay, what's my business legacy going to look like? What do I want for it? If something happens to me and I can't come back to it, who should I contact? What should we do? What does this look like? Do I have any sort of plan to sell? I was working with someone. She had a consultation and had decided to move forward with her business pre-planning. She was a local person and had been in business for, decades probably. She did a lot of work in her field and had the consultation, and we'd had her first session scheduled, and then she needed to reschedule it and then reschedule it and then reschedule it. And I found out not quite a year after we'd had that first consultation, she had actually passed away. And it was really sudden. It was a very similar to the story that I read that kind of started me on this journey. Was she had gotten a really late stage cancer diagnosis, and then less than 30 days later, she was gone. And her family didn't know anything about her business. She had run it on her own, and they ended up just having to shut the doors. She had a really good book of business that potentially could have been valuable to somebody else, and they weren't able to finish projects that she had in work because they didn't know about them. They didn't know how to find them. So we've got to think through those pieces from a business point of view too, of, okay, what can this legacy look like? Of if something happens, how can I, finish out, or how can someone finish it out or close it down, or, help somebody else take on this work so that we're not just kind of leaving things undone.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, what are some of the common challenges that you might have when you're doing the caregiver book with families, or we can go over to the personal side when you're doing the estate closure. What are some of your biggest challenges, and how have you sort of learned to overcome those, or have you?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. For the caregiver work, the feedback that I have gotten from the caregivers that I've worked with has been, I have tiny nuggets of time, right? They can't sit down, for the personal work, it's a 75-minute session. We sit down, it's a whole, they don't have an hour. They don't have half an hour. Sometimes, caring for that person is very often a full-time job. It's it's what they do. And so I have that process set up a little bit differently. So for that process, if somebody wants to do the guided piece, they still get their book. They get their book right away. Actually, they can download it, start to fill it out in those pockets of time. So when they're sitting and waiting for their kiddo to finish in therapy, or when they've taken their loved one to the doctor and they're waiting on the doctor, they can start filling out the information that they have. And then with the guided package, I provide 2 hours of time for them to use whenever. However, like, you want to meet with me for 15 minutes every couple of weeks so that we can make sure you're getting it done? Absolutely, let's do that. You want to meet for an hour and really kind of dive into some of these other details and why they matter and how great, let's do that. So it's kind of, I've tailored that to be different, less structured, because every caregiver family is so different.
Spread thin, probably.
Yes, that's what I hear. Yes. That's what I've experienced with them. So it's just made it even more individualized for them because that's what they need. So I think that's something that has been really specific to that work, that I've seen they just don't have the time. They don't have the margin. That's part of what we're trying to get them, right? Like, if you're not the only person who knows everything, then yeah, you can take a little time back. Somebody can step in. We can get you some respite, or have another family member come in and kind of take over for a little while so you can get a breather and not be the only person who knows all of this information.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like I'd be sending myself voice memos, notes all the time.
Right?
As I thought of things, I would have to be like, oh, and let's remember to put this in the book.
Yep.
Like I'd have to probably be sending myself little voice reminders all the time, which I just do for my life. I do that all the time. But that I can see that their time is very valuable and limited, and gosh, that would be hard.
Yeah. Well, and so, having it digitally makes it a little bit more accessible, because at least you're not then having to also carry.
Right.
You can do it on your laptop. In theory, I suppose you could do it on an iPad if you really wanted to.
Sure.
But yeah, it helps to make it a little bit more accessible so that you aren't having to like always have this book with you. You can do it,
right?
Kind of in those snippets of time of like, oh, I know that I was supposed to work on that, so I can take some notes here and add them in later.
Yeah. So if someone wanted to find out more about your services or wanted to get started right away, how would they find you?
Yeah, that is a great question. So my business is RHEA Services, RHEA. So RHEAServices.com. I'm on Instagram, RHEA Services, Facebook, LinkedIn. Technically, I'm over there too. But I would say, honestly, the best way is there's a form on my website where you can request, a consultation or just send an email. My consultations for any of my services are always free because I just want to get to know people and see if I can help them where they are. And if not, it's okay too. Maybe I can point them in the right direction.
That's good that you say that, because not everybody's consultation is free. I made the mistake one time. We were at a panel discussion and I was like, all of these people have free consultations. And there was like an attorney on the panel and they were like, no, they're not. Yeah. So it's good that it's good that you say that free consultation. And it's RHEAServices.com, RHEA Services.com.
That's right. Yep. And Sara at RHEAServices.com is my email.
With an H.
With an H. That's right. Yeah. I've got the bookend, Sara. Yep.
I didn't want us to go to wrap up before I did mention your 2024 recipient of the Jacqueline Troy Inspired Fund Award from the Chamber of Central Indiana, right?
I am.
Brag a little bit about your award for our guests.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to. It's everything's a story, right? I have a friend who's been very closely affiliated with the Indy Chamber for her whole business. She's a local artist. She makes wonderful blown glass things, jewelry and vases and like super cool stuff. So she's been a part of the chamber for quite some time. And she had approached me last year. Nope. Gosh, it was 2 years ago because it would have been in 2023 when I applied. And said, I think that you would have a good chance of receiving this grant. I think you should apply for it. And I was like, cool. Okay. And so I applied for the grant, and, the process was, I guess there were over 50 women owned businesses who applied for this grant. And I was the one who was chosen to receive it, which was just such an honor. And as I was kind of doing some research on the grant in the first place and the fund is, I had realized that my friend who was in business, she was actually one of the first people I talked about my idea for this business when I first had the idea in 2020. And she's like, I think it's great. Do it. How can I help? And she had actually connected me. Yeah. She had connected me to Jackie, is what Jacqueline went by, in the Indy chamber. And we were in the process of setting up a meeting when she actually passed from COVID, just very suddenly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was such a full circle moment for me.
Yeah.
To be able to see the legacy that she is still having. Like I never did get the chance to actually know her when she was still here, but like, obviously she was a well-loved, wonderful woman. And so I got to share that story with them last year of, we were emailing and hadn't got anything scheduled when I, finally heard back from somebody that she had passed. And it was just, it's such an honor for me to be a part of that community.
Yeah.
And to be a part of her legacy, I just think is again, just an honor. It's really lovely.
That is very full circle. That's what I was thinking as you were telling the story. Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm glad we asked you about that. I was like trying to find the right time to squeeze it in. And do I ask? And that's a great story.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very well deserved. So,
thank you.
Yes. Yeah. You're doing really good work. And I mean, again, that's what this podcast is for, is to highlight some of our industry people who are doing good work and serving specifically in the sandwich generation space. And so, yeah, it's an honor to have you on here. It sounds like you've been on a lot of podcasts and you're making your rounds, which is great. I think the part of the crux of our small business ownership is just getting the story out about how we can help people. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been lovely to catch up with all of you and be a part of this podcast where you're really serving a really necessary part of the population.
Absolutely. Before we go, we should remind everybody to make sure you leave us a comment. Tell us what topics you want to hear about, who you want to hear from. Share, follow, all of the things. We're trying to kind of grassroots build a podcast, and so we would love it if you would share with your audience too, Sarah.
Thank you. I will.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was just going to say one other quick thing. Like, if you are the sandwich generation and you're listening to this and you have something that has been really helpful and beneficial in your life with your caregiving journey, with, learning any of that, like, please comment and give us that information, because if it was helpful to you, most likely it's going to be helpful to others. And we would love to continue that for other people. So yeah. That's it.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.